Hey guys, welcome to the Kunal Call. I'm Kunal Bhatia, and we are going to talk about today the one and only Shawn Michaels, Mr. WrestleMania, the greatest of all time. Let's see, I am joined by Mikhail,
Hey guys.
Farhan, and Mustafa. And now we
Yeah,
all will talk about why do we consider Shawn Michaels as Mr. WrestleMania. So thank you guys for joining me. Um,
Hey Kunal, thank you for having us.
Thank you for
yeah,
having
thank you.
Thanks.
us.
It's an honor for me for having you guys. So let's get down to business. We all love WWE since 2005, maybe because we were 8 to 9 years old, or maybe before that because we love wrestling or we love some action to see on screen. So we're going to start with the fact that why did you get into WWE? What made you love the business? What made you like it more and more? So Mikhail, I would like to start with you.
So what really got me into WWE was like when I was kind of like 5, my cousin he was elder than me, so he would watch WWF as it was known at the time, like constantly. He had the VCRs, and he just introduced me to the games. The first one ever, which was SmackDown, followed by SmackDown Know Your Role. And from there, I started playing the video games, and I just was fascinated with wrestling. And then I started watching it as well. Like he would put on his VCRs, and we would just watch it together. And I was just mind blown, like by people like The Undertaker, especially him, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock. Even for me at the time, it was Kane. So since then, I just have been following wrestling, and yeah, I mean, it's a big part of my childhood, and even till today, even though I don't watch it as prominently as I used to, I'm definitely at my core still a fan.
Okay, that's a good introduction as to why you love WWE. Farhan, what about you?
Yeah, I think me and Mikhail have a very similar approach to it's a very similar history with WWE. Also when I was like in 2001, 2000, I was about 4 or 5. I had cousins who were older than me, and that was the time when the Attitude Era was at its peak. So I'd hear so many stories about like Stone Cold and The Rock and the McMahon character, and like about like Mikhail said, Undertaker, where I'd hear stories about how Undertaker was like his dead guy, he never tapped out, or like he was buried alive. So I heard all these crazy stories, these wacky stories, and that got me quite interested. And then around 2004, when we got Dish TV, there used to be something called there was that channel TNS Sports or something like that. I don't know what the name, but there was a Dish TV channel where they used to play broadcasts of Raw and SmackDown and Velocity and Heat, and obviously that was the Ruthless Aggression era. That was when I started watching it. So I loved the action. I loved the story. I was a kid. At that time, kayfabe was still quite prominent. I mean, now it's pretty
Yeah.
much non-existent. But back then, kayfabe was very, very prominent. And I just felt that the storytelling is what captivated me. And I grew up a big fan. Like I played I must have spent half my childhood playing SmackDown versus Raw 2006 GM mode. You know what I'm saying? Like half my childhood must have gone there. And then like
Mhm.
obviously as I got older and my priorities started changing, I fell out of wrestling. And then, especially when I found out that it was, quote unquote fake, so I stopped watching wrestling. And then a couple of years back, I started hitting the gym. The gym became something that I became very passionate about. And obviously, WWE is all about the gym. There's so much physicality in it. And while I was hitting the gym, and when I started rewatching WWE, I sort of gained an admiration for the athleticism, the physicality of it. And then even, Mikhail is my best friend for so many years, and he also is very passionate about WWE. So that was one thing else that got me back into it. And like Mikhail said, I don't watch it as much as I used to, but at my core, I'm still a fan. So it's a combination of many factors as to why I love WWE.
So, Mr. Mustafa, what's your take on why do you like the WWE or what got you into it?
Because first of all, Kunal, thanks a lot for having me on this. Yeah, for me, it started in 2003. I was in Pakistan. The Cricket World Cup was happening, and the same channel showed wrestling as well. I was like 6 years old back then, but I was so intrigued as to like what was happening on TV. I just like couldn't get my eyes off it. And then 3 years later, in 2006, all my school friends used to talk about Edge and John Cena feuding, and so I started watching it then, and that got me hooked into WWE for like a couple of years. Again in 2009 January. Randy Orton started feuding with the McMahons, and that got me into it again. And then in 2010, John Cena versus Nexus feud, that really got me into wrestling for a long time. That's when I started finding out what kayfabe is, and like it's not exactly what we think it is. Like I used to believe in kayfabe because I was like, because I was like really young back then. So I've had my on and off moments until this year at the Royal Rumble when Edge came back. I was like, I have to get back into this again, and here I am.
Okay, so now the main topic is about Shawn Michaels. We have been with fans since so many years. We still miss him. We still want him to come back and wrestle so many great athletes who are wrestling right now. I want to ask you one thing, and I want you to consider the past and the future. Is Shawn Michaels the greatest of all time? And Farhan, I would like to start this answer with you.
Yeah, for sure. For me, Shawn Michaels is the greatest of all time. I think everyone knows, everyone who knows me knows how much of a huge Shawn Michaels fan I am. When I was a kid, it was Undertaker was my favorite, and then Shawn was number two. But when I started, when I recently became a fan, and when I started watching WWE, the New Generation era, the Attitude era, the Ruthless Aggression era, because now we have the internet, right? So we have
Yeah.
that luxury of viewing old matches. We can see things that you know we missed out when we were younger, or we weren't even born when all those matches happened. So for me, I think Shawn is the greatest of all time because I think firstly, I think in terms of performances, I don't think there's anyone that's better than him in terms of being an in-ring performer. I feel that pretty much the entire wrestling industry considers him to be the best performer. He can tell the best stories, and he's one of the best sellers. He can really sell a move. I think he's one of those people who can have a great match with, like him and AJ Styles. They have this very rare quality where they can have an amazing match with anyone and make it look believable. Sean to me is he's got he may not be the best on the mic, but he's still really really good on the mic. I prefer him as a heel. Obviously, Who's Your Daddy Montreal comes first when I think about his talent on the mic. I also think he had a very consistent career
Yeah.
from day one. I think he was very consistent. I mean, he just got better and better and better and better and better. So it's just like mind boggling when you think that his greatest matches came at the end of his career. And even throughout his career, he had so many amazing matches. And I would also say he may be perhaps WWE. I personally think that, you know, a generation of wrestlers would not exist without Shawn Michaels. You got guys like Daniel Bryan, you've got guys like John Morrison, you got guys like Rob Van Dam, you got guys like Chris Jericho. I mean, these guys are considered to be, one of the greatest of all time, and they all are influenced by Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
things like the Attitude Era. Even Shawn laid the foundation with D-Generation X. He laid the foundation towards the Attitude Era. So I think for all these reasons, Sean is my number one guy.
Mustafa, what about you?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think like Farhan pretty much said everything, but yeah, look, he has been one of the best in-ring performers of all time. Like not just winning matches, but even like when it comes to putting other people over, when it comes to selling moves, pretty much doing everything in the ring. He took away this thought that wrestling is for big, huge guys, and so many like people like right now, so many wrestlers right now are like literally inspired by him. Like Ron said, like Chris Jericho, John Morrison, even Kofi Kingston. Like he said that his Rumble saves come. I mean, his Rumble saves are like inspired from Shawn, and so many other like I can't think of right now. They all of them said that their in ring work is inspired by Shawn Michaels just because he's like one of the best in ring performers of all time.
Yeah. So, Mikhail, would you like to add to that? And what do you think he's the greatest of all time?
See, to be honest with you, Kunal, I mean, I don't think there will ever be a greatest of all time. There's no factual greatest of all time, and let me explain. So basically, fans will always think someone is the greatest of all time, and even I'm guilty of that. I think it's the Undertaker. Actually, it's not HBK. But objectively speaking, Shawn Michaels, first of all, like without a doubt, he is probably one of the best performers of wrestling ever, and the impact he's had on wrestling. He's an icon. His gimmick, his mic skills, everything. He was believable as both face and heel, and of course, his in-ring work is. I don't think anyone will ever top Shawn Michaels. But in terms of the greatest of all time, it's a very subjective thing because one can argue that it's Taker or it's Austin or it's The Rock or it's Bret the Hitman Hart.
Yeah.
There were even like talent that were never given that chance that Shawn Michaels was, such as Chris Benoit. I've said his name. I'm probably going to get in trouble. Or maybe even like even people argue about Eddie Guerrero. There's even a case for Hulk Hogan, maybe not in terms of his in-ring performance, but just the icon that Hulk Hogan was for wrestling. He put it on the map. No one can deny that. So there's a lot of arguments. So for me, is Shawn Michaels the greatest of all time? In my book, no, but I wouldn't be shocked if a lot of people considered him the greatest because he deserves that title.
Okay, that's a very controversial thing to say about Mr. Hulk Hogan. I think he's very, very overrated, but that's not the topic here.
Like I said, his in-ring skills definitely, but you can't deny the impact he has had on wrestling. Like he brought into the mainstream. He's the reason wrestling became what it is today.
Yeah, I know we're going a little off topic, and I'm also talking in between. But yeah, I know I shouldn't be doing this, but yeah, for sure. I mean, yes, the wrestling boom. I mean, Hulk Hogan was wrestling. He literally was a one-man industry. You know what I'm saying? He really, really was a one-man industry. So that's definitely something to consider.
Okay, so now we'll go over the top 5 matches of Mr. Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania. I'll start off with the 5th match I picked is Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho, WrestleMania 19. I think it was one of the most classic matches I've ever seen in terms of the build-up, in terms of the performance. The finishing also was so innovative and so new that it really made me think, oh man, Chris Jericho is here to stay. Because by then you never knew about Chris Jericho because he was in WCW, then he came to WWE. He was not a big star. He needed Shawn, and Shawn also was coming back from retirement, and he needed that big match. Because after 14, he was not there for 4 years, and suddenly comes in 19, and he's facing Chris Jericho, the rising star of wrestling
Mhm.
industry. So my 5th pick is Shawn Michaels with Chris Jericho. Mustafa, what's your pick?
My 5th pick is actually Shawn Michaels versus John Cena at WrestleMania 23. And the reason being is because John Cena was like 2 years into his new gimmick, like the one which we know right now, the one with all the never give up, CNH and all that stuff. And Vince McMahon was building him up to be like the face of the company. I mean, like the biggest face of the company. So at that point, that match versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, it just showed like even though Shawn Michaels put him over, Shawn Michaels is so good at putting him over. Like he's just so good at putting other people over with that. Because at that point, people thought that is John Cena's best match of his career at that point. Of course, after that, he went on to have a great rivalry with Randy Orton and CM Punk and all those people. But like, it just showed how Shawn Michaels, as a veteran, can put other people over. And to me, I feel like that's his fifth best WrestleMania match in history.
Mikhail, what's your 5th pick?
So my 5th pick for greatest Shawn Michaels matches of all time is going to be Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 21. So the reason for that is because the build-up, first of all, was fantastic. It was believable because, like Kurt Angle explained that his resentment was because he won a gold medal with a broken freaking neck. And even then, people were still talking about Shawn Michaels. So that build-up jealousy was a perfect, explanation as to why Kurt was so bitter. In terms of the matches, first of all, this is like the two greatest in-ring performers of all time going at it. So in terms of technique, like technical wrestling, spot on. And then it had a good blend of aggression as well. Like, there was a point where, there was an angle slam off the top rope, which I flipped out at. And there was, of course, Shawn Michaels cross body onto the table. So it had everything. It was brutal. It was, in terms of wrestling, amazing. And it was a great finish as well. Like, the applause that Shawn Michaels got after the match, even though he didn't win, just goes to show how much the fans, including myself, love and respect him.
And
Can I just add
Farhan,
something to it?
yeah, sure, you can add
Okay.
something.
Yeah, I also heard like it was like a perfect blend of like WWE wrestling versus Olympic wrestling because Kurt Angle was known to use his Olympic moves in the ring, like takedowns and stuff. So people were excited to see that part of that match as well.
Yeah, that's true. Farhan, what about you? 5th pick?
5th pick would be Shawn versus Vince McMahon, the no holds barred match. That to me, that match, I think that firstly, the fact that the greatest of all time is going against Vince McMahon. and Vince McMahon isn't even a wrestler. So Shawn had that really impossible task to make a great match with a guy who isn't even a wrestler. And a guy who's like, I think at that time he must have been about 60, 61, Vince McMahon. But to me, that match was it was pure carnage. It was a fun match. I remember as a kid when I saw that match when I was a kid at that time, and I remember jumping up and down with joy. That just the carnage of the match the build up towards that match was just amazing. Like you had the Bret Hart Montreal Screwjob history, especially when you know about the relationship between Shawn and Vince. Like now I know about their relationship in the '90s. Back then I didn't, but I'm sure that was used in the build up towards that match. It just had a great build up towards it when he smashes the muscle and fitness cover on Vince's head. The Kiss My Ass Club. Remember the time he had that Kiss My Ass Club, and when he puts Shane McMahon in his ass during that match. I mean, come on, that's the one thing I love about HBK is like he can really make a match fun. He can make a match emotional. He can make a match brutal, and that match. I remember when HBK got the first ladder and he went on top, we were like, whoa, what the hell? How is he going to do that? And then when he brought the second ladder that was even bigger, I was like, oh no. You know what I mean? And then when he handcuffs Shane to the rope and he does the dance and then he whacks him with the candlestick. And let's not forget the Spirit Squad. I mean, we all hated the Spirit Squad. But to see Shawn
Definitely.
Michaels with that baton just whacking them all in the head like that, one by one, and then jumping off the ladder for the elbow on Vince with the trash can on his head, with Shane watching with his handcuffed. I mean, that was so entertaining. And it wasn't a traditional wrestling match, but you know what? So what? It entertained me. It told a great story. It showed that Shawn could make anyone look good. I mean, making Vince McMahon look good. And it was the match of the night for me, and it won match of the year. So that's number 5 on my list.
That's a good choice. I have to say that one of the picks that you have taken is above my list. So we're going to discover which match is above my list. So Mikhail, I'd like to start with you, number 4. What's your number 4 pick of Shawn Michaels matches?
So for number 4, I'm going with Shawn Michaels versus Triple H versus The Heir at WrestleMania 20. Actually, it was Chris Benoit, but WWE will let you know that now. So first of all, what I want to start off here is by saying that JR is an absolute genius. He sold this match to perfection. He talked about the 18-year build-up to Benoit becoming the heavyweight champion.
Yeah.
And he sold it like crazy. In terms of the match, again, I mean, this is one of the probably for me, the best technical wrestler is Chris Benoit. And he showed that he could hang with veterans like Shawn Michaels and Triple H. And they just gave a fantastic performance. Amazing wrestling, amazing spots such as the double suplex onto the table that like knocked Chris Benoit out for a while. It was bloody. It was so believable because I remember as a kid, me watching it, I was just like, oh my God, can someone stop the match? Like these two guys are just bleeding out. And then there was also the fact that there were so many close calls. Like you just thought that Triple H was going to tap out to the sharpshooter, and then Shawn just like knocks Benoit's head off with the sweet chin music. Yeah, exactly. Kunal knows what's up. And then, of course, let's talk about the finish of the match. Picture perfect, like the crippler cross face on Triple H. And at this time, it was so rare that Triple H actually tapped out, and to see it happen on the grandest stage, that was probably the greatest ending to a WrestleMania. And then, of course, the emotional part, Benoit like crying his eyes out, and then his best friend, like since the beginning, Eddie Guerrero comes in the ring. They're both champions, and they embrace, and then like there's the confetti, and the crowd is just going wild. And JR's losing his voice during commentary. It was such a great match, and it was such a great moment. It's really a shame that we will never actually see WWE acknowledge it because of what happened with Benoit. But to someone like me who has watched that match 100 times and has lived through that moment like in 2004, it's just something I can never forget, and that's why it's going to be top. It's going to be number 4 for me.
For me, number 4 would be Shawn versus Bret. The Iron Man, Shawn versus Bret for the Iron Man match for the WWE Championship. I think that match was a pure wrestling match. It was the first time we had an Iron Man match with two of the best at that time going for it. Obviously, Shawn's iconic entrance from the zip line from the top of the stadium to the ring. I mean, you see that shot everywhere. The last 20 minutes of that match has to be the last 20 minutes of that match has to be some of the best wrestling that I've seen in my entire life. And I think for me, that match, it really showcased how good Shawn and Bret were, how the chemistry between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart during that match was just unbelievable. And obviously, the first time for Shawn Michaels, I think when Shawn won that WWE Championship in overtime, I think that was the first time where the landscape. I know people tend to point to Bret Hart when he won the championship, and when the sort of the landscape of WWE changed from these big monstrous men to now the smaller guys. I felt that started the change, but with Shawn winning the title, I felt that was what sort of set it to stone. You know what I'm trying to say? I felt that match was also very influential. I feel that a lot of wrestlers point to that match as being one of their favorite. Davey Boy Smith, Drew McIntyre, Wade Barrett, they all point to that match as being their favorite matches of all time. So again, a very influential match. It may not have had crazy spots, it didn't have any crazy bumps, but when you sort of sit down and you think about it, wrestling for 60 minutes straight is it sounds it's impossible, and to wrestle 60 minutes straight very consistently and at a very fast pace is something to be something to be acknowledged. So that's number 4 on my list, Shawn versus Bret.
So, Mustafa, what about you? What's your number 4?
So number 4 on my list is actually your number 5, Kunal. It's Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho at WrestleMania 19. Like the build up to it was amazing, and the fact that Chris Jericho looked up to Shawn Michaels was also like a big part to consider in that match. When Chris Jericho used to be at WCW and he used to look up to Shawn Michaels, he used to literally watch Shawn wrestle and try to build his wrestling style on him. So according to so many people, that match was like a teacher versus student, and you could see that it brought out the best in Chris Jericho when you realize that he's going to face his idol, and like everything about that match was so good. Like even before the match, I remember Chris Jericho saying it like he had a highlight reel segment with Shawn. They went backstage. Vince looked at them both, and he said, "This match is going to be money," and that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. So my number 4 pick will be Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair at WrestleMania 24. I think it was one of the most classical matches I've ever seen in my life in terms of the style, because we know both of them are like swag kings. They are
Yeah.
style and profiling. And with Ric Flair's last match, you needed an opponent like Shawn Michaels, because if you're going to give a farewell to a legend like Ric Flair, and I've seen his matches on the WWE Network, which you subscribe, because it's amazing content and it's amazing. What do you say? It's amazing to see so many matches in the past, because we were not born then, and WWE Network allows us to see that matches. With Ric Flair, I always say that he's so good, but with Shawn, it's like Ric Flair had to perform with the caliber of Shawn, because Ric Flair was old, and Ric Flair was the one who brought it to Shawn for me. Shawn Michaels was in his prime. He was 40 years old, 41, and he was doing it so easily. But Ric Flair was old, but he's proved it to the world that he can still hang with the best. And that's what we want to see as a wrestling fan, to see a guy, whatever age he is, just coming out there and entertaining the audience. And the super kicks, my God, man, those 2 super kicks were on the money. And even the referee reacting, Charles Robinson, he's reacting like as if he's getting hit by Shawn Michaels. So that was the emotion, and obviously he loses, and Ric Flair loses, and he, retires. But for me, that should have been this last match, but he went to TNA, and he's almost screwed his legacy up because of those things. But with WWE, I think him being his last match in the WWE just solidifies that he had the best ending, one of the best endings of anyone's career. Retiring
Yeah.
with the best match, and going and meeting a family and stuff. So for me, that's number
Yeah,
4.
definitely.
So Farhan, I will go with you for the next number 3 pick of your choice.
Number 3 pick would be Shawn. Number 3 for me personally would be Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon, WrestleMania 10, that iconic ladder match. I would say, even though it may not have been the first ladder match, and the first was Shawn and Brett, but to me, it's probably one of, to this day, it's just one of the most iconic matches. It just has, in my opinion, aged so well. I can watch that match today and still be blown away by that match. I mean,
Yeah.
that match had, I think, tables, ladders, and chairs, TNA, all these all these crazy matches that you see, it wouldn't exist without this match. Shawn versus Razor, WrestleMania 10. That shot of Shawn jumping from the ladder and splashing Razor Ramon is it's such an iconic take. You see it everywhere around you, and I think that was the first time people saw. I think not only was this match influential, I think this match also uh, set the career for Shawn Michaels. It was after
Yeah.
that match did people see that, yeah, this guy has something special. This guy could be a one of a kind talent, and it was that match that
True,
propelled
true.
Shawn Michaels into the stratosphere. And obviously, Razor Ramon came out on top, but ultimately Shawn was the star of that match. It was such a good match. It was not just Shawn versus Razor. It was Shawn versus Razor versus a ladder. Like, that's how good that
Yeah.
match was. And I
Yeah.
think just Shawn selling his athleticism, the influence of that match, the way it transcends everything out there. I think that match has to be number 3 on my list.
Okay, so I will go with the next number 3. For me, the next number 3 match for me is Shawn versus Bret Hart, or pick that you did for number 4, because I would rate that match as one of the greatest matches, because it was the first ever Iron Man match in history. It was something very new, something very different, and these athletes had to carry a match for 1 hour, which is not easy, obviously, which is because you don't know what's going to happen, you don't know how it is. But for me, when you talk about Shawn with Brett, Shawn Michaels was the next big star, and Bret Hart was not given enough attention. But Bret Hart showed that he's still the best. You know, for me he was greatest of all time. Like for me, greatest of all time goes like Ric Flair, Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart, and AJ Styles. You can't compare these four, because they're so iconic. Because whenever you see Bret Hart matches, you're like, oh man, he's hit this guy, but you never hear the guy telling the other guy who's been hit saying, I'm injured. He never injured anyone, and that's the greatest quality of a wrestler. So for me, that's number 3. On top of that, if you see the match, there's not one finish in the whole match. It's all wrestling for an hour. They have done wrestling moves, and the finish comes in the last 1, 2, 3 minutes, and they're like they pace the match, they show the style and this and that. But for me, it's a very iconic match in terms of showing that what WWE can do. But right now that's not the case with talented wrestlers leaving. It's just sad because when you see the past, it's amazing. So Mustafa, I would like to go to you. What's your number 3 pick on this topic?
So my number 3 pick is definitely going to be Shawn Michaels versus Ric Flair, like you mentioned, at WrestleMania 24. There's so much emotion in that match itself. As you said, Ric Flair, one of the best in-ring performers of all time. Shawn Michaels, too, also one of the best in-ring performers of all time. And there was this thing that Ric Flair wanted Shawn to put him over. I mean, yeah, like Ric Flair wanted to put Shawn over in his last match. He wanted Shawn to be the one to retire him. Shawn did not want to do that. And therefore, you saw so much emotion happen in this match. You saw the iconic ending. Like, I don't think we have seen a wrestler burst into tears in the middle of a match. Shawn did that towards the end. He burst into tears. He said that line, "I'm sorry, I love you," and he hits that switch in music and literally gives the most iconic finish to Ric Flair's career.
So that's a good pick. Mikhail, what about you? What's your number 3 pick?
Actually, Kunal, you and I have the same match. I'm going with Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart at WrestleMania 12 Iron Man match. That match is mind blowing. I know I've been saying that word a lot, but honestly, like, those two solidified why they are considered the greatest wrestlers in the world. It was just wrestling. It was pure moves. The pace of the match was brilliant. And what I really loved about the match is Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart did not get a single like pin or submission until it went to overtime, and no one could hit their move. I think that Bret did get Shawn in the sharpshooter, but obviously he broke it and he didn't get a chance to do it again. And I love the fact that that switch in music was so well earned because it was right at the end of the match. And then the 1, 2, 3, and of course the iconic line, "The boyhood dream has come true." It was just a magical match, and it's actually like a reason I feel that WWE should really be capitalizing more on Iron Man matches, because I mean Sean and Brett have shown just how brilliant that kind of match can go.
Yeah. So we are done with the 3 picks. Number 2, Mustafa, I'd like to start with you. What's your number 2 pick in this topic?
So number 2 is going to be a match that I think all three of you have spoken about. Mikhail just spoke about it, and it is the Iron Man match. I mean, you guys have said everything about it, but I would just like to add that if there was any two people you would take to wrestle for an hour, at that point, it would have been these two. It would have been Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels. You would expect them to wrestle for an hour and still put up one hell of an amazing match. And when you add that Iron Man match stipulation to it, you almost view it as a football match. Like, who's going to score now? Who's going to score then? And it's going to go to extra time. And Shawn Michaels got the, like, you could say, like, the late winning goal kind of thing. It was so iconic, so good. Like, and like Mikhail said, like the iconic line, "The boyhood dream has come true." That match, like, if Shawn Michaels didn't have his, like, my number 1 pick match, then that would have definitely been my favorite Shawn Michaels match of all time.
So, okay. So, Mikhail, what's your number 2 pick of Shawn Michaels matches?
Number 2 for me is going to be Shawn Michaels versus The Undertaker, Bad Blood in Your House, the famous Hell in a Cell match, the first ever Hell in a Cell match.
Bro, this is only WrestleMania. Only WrestleMania matches.
WrestleMania.
We can only have WrestleMania matches?
Only
Yes.
WrestleMania matches. Not career matches, only WrestleMania.
Well, then I guess then I'm going to have to go with, it's going to have to be Shawn Michaels versus John Cena at WrestleMania 23. Now, Fuzzy, I know you mentioned that one on your list, and I absolutely loved it because Cena at the time wasn't at his peak in terms of his wrestling. He was at his peak definitely of his popularity, but Shawn Michaels just proved anyone can look good when you wrestle Shawn Michaels. And obviously, again, like the spots were crazy. The moonsault onto Cena, and although the table didn't break, but oh my god, like John Cena's back, the way it bent, that I felt that. And it was so intense. I mean, there was, finishing moves, and then people kicked out. And Cena looked good in this match. I mean, I know I'm not the biggest fan of John Cena, but I got to admit that in this match he outdid himself. And of course, the brilliant ending of the STF and John Cena like celebrating in the ring and trying to shake Shawn Michaels' hand. Everything was believable about this match, and that's why the Heartbreak Kid will always be a legend.
Okay, that's a good pick. Farhan, what's your number 2 pick?
My number 2 pick would have to be Shawn versus Chris Jericho. I know you guys mentioned this. All three of you guys mentioned this match, but for me personally, what I liked the most about this match was that I felt that this match was the perfect example of how to put someone over.
Yeah.
And this match, even though Jericho wasn't the victor, Shawn was able to. He wasn't the focal point of this match. The thing with Shawn Michaels is that, unfortunately, or depending on your point of view, is that he's always the focal point. Very rarely is it a sort of a 50-50 thing. Like if Shawn versus Brett, that's 50-50. Shawn versus Rick, that's 50-50. But this was the first time where Shawn was less than 50. It was Jericho's match. This match to me was mostly about showcasing Chris Jericho's skills. And what I love about this match is the ending. Normally Shawn tends to have these really big and these really grand endings. But this was a simple roll up. It was just something refreshing. It was something that was understated. And I love that low blow that Chris Jericho did to Shawn Michaels. That hug, it felt so real. But then when he hit the low blow, oh, you just hated Chris Jericho. And I felt that this match, it just established Jericho as such a great heel. I know we're focusing on Shawn Michaels, but the fact that Shawn could really, I think that match really is one of those few matches that really put someone over on the map. For me, Shawn versus Chris Jericho comes number 2 on my list.
Okay, so for me, number 2 would be a very controversial match. Is Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. I know it's a match that everyone loves. I know it's a match that everyone cares about. I love that match. I see it again and again, and it just blows my mind that these guys pulled off a classic. But I would place it at number two because I would like you guys, because I know it's going to be number one of everyone's pick now. I'm not speaking that much now because my number one pick, and let's go to the number one pick now. My number one pick would be Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle. I think that
Yeah.
match just solidifies that you.
Oh damn, my number 5.
That
Yeah,
wasn't
that's
even
number
on
five.
my list.
Because whenever I see that match, and I'll be very honest, that match was brilliant. I'm not saying it's better than Shawn Michaels and Undertaker in terms of storytelling, but in terms of wrestling,
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
speaking on a wrestling part. That match, it actually, I think Kurt Angle is very underrated, very
Yeah.
underrated. He's not considered as one of the best of all time. He's not. But
True,
when you see
true. Yeah, I see the
Undertaker,
point.
Rey Mysterio, whatever, with this match is Shawn, again, what Farhan said that it was 50-50 Shawn and Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle never had those moments how Shawn Michaels had, if you till that time. Shawn Michaels was the Mr. WrestleMania. He's the guy who's going to do this, who's going to do that. But for me, Shawn allowed Kurt Angle to show his talent. Like even Mikhail mentioned the angle stamp on the top rope, and he kicks
Yeah.
out, and then the kick on his face when Shawn Michaels kicks Kurt Angle such a music, and he just lying there dead. There's no movement, and then he kicks out again. So these moments for me was great. For me, the number one pick is Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle. It might be controversial. So let's go to Farhan and let's see what's his number one pick.
Okay, drum roll. The number one pick for me, just like I mean, it's Shawn Michaels versus Hornswoggle. That's my number one pick.
Yeah, that's true.
No, the number one pick for me is perhaps, in my opinion, the second greatest match of all time. But the greatest Shawn Michaels WrestleMania match and the greatest Undertaker match, which would be Shawn versus Undertaker WrestleMania 25. I mean, just that match was. I really can't find. I cannot find any issue with that match. Really, there is no. There is. It's actually a perfect match. There is nothing about that match that I can go, yeah, they should have done a bit of this, they should have toned down this. No, this match had the perfect storytelling, it had the perfect wrestling, it had the perfect selling, it had even a botch, and Shawn Michaels kicking out of that tombstone was just like JR's
Yeah.
classic. I just had an out of body experience. I mean, that match, I can watch that match again still. In fact, that match was so good that even Bret Hart, who hated Shawn Michaels, he watched that match and he was so blown away by it that he wanted to reach out to Shawn Michaels to bury the hatchet. So, like that match, it just, there are no words to describe that match. I think that match is, to me, number two on the greatest matches of all time. But there are no words to describe why this match is number one. It's just perfect. It's 20 on 10 in my opinion.
Mustafa, what about you? Number one pick.
So my number one pick is also the same, Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. But I have a lot to say about this. First of all, the build up to it was amazing. When you have two big teams playing in a tournament, you always have that big build up. This match had exactly that build up. But to people for people to see Undertaker going to WrestleMania, they did expect okay, close finishes and stuff, but they always expected the Undertaker to come out, as the winner because the famous streak. However, in this match, the story was told in such a way. First of all, that 10 count, that count out stuff. Like no one expected the Undertaker to get counted out, yet people actually would get counted out because he was out of the ring for so long. He made it in the ring and a half. Then the famous, kicking out of that tombstone. When that happened, I feel like that changed the course of Undertaker's matches in the next couple of WrestleManias because that's when people started thinking, okay, the streak can be broken, and it might just be broken right now. And you had those famous Undertaker's expression and all that, and then right after that, Shawn Michaels giving Undertaker the sweet chin music, and people thought, okay, now it's gonna end. Now it's confirmed the streak is gonna end. At that point, everyone is standing, and this everyone in the crowd is standing because they want to witness that moment. and then it doesn't end there. It's almost like adding like more plot to an already crazy story that has been just put out there. And then you had the finish, which like after that finish, like as Farhan said that even Bret Hart wanted to reach out to him and bury the hatchet. That's how great it was. I mean, even though Undertaker won, I feel like Undertaker gave Shawn the right to put over the invincibility of his streak. He gave him the right to he chose Shawn Michaels, the guy, to make his streak look that it can be broken. We saw it again the next year because this built up for the next year's WrestleMania 26 when Shawn Michaels went in with the mentality of I'm going to break the streak or I'm going to leave. That was another iconic match. And then again in 27, 28 with Triple H, we had those iconic moments when Triple H gave Undertaker the tombstone in 27 and the sweet chin music and the pedigree in 28. All those things were done because of this match. This match literally gave Undertaker's streak that thing that, okay, it is not invincible anymore. It can be broken anytime. And people changed their opinions on The Undertaker. And this match kind of certified the fact that Shawn Michaels is Mr. WrestleMania, not because he wins all the time, but because he just puts up one hell of a spectacle at WrestleMania every single time he's up there.
That's a good thing you have said, Mustafa. Elaborated very well. So, Mikhail, what's your number one pick?
Well, it's not Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 25. It's Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania 26.
Oh, wow.
Let's go. Let's see what you have to say. Oh, yeah. By the way, can I just say one thing? So many wrestling fans out there. I'm sorry. So many wrestling fans out there class this as the greatest wrestling match of all time. Not just a WrestleMania match, not just Undertaker Shawn, the greatest wrestling match of all time. Go on.
I like to hear Mikhail say this because I want to hear his topic. Say, man.
Yeah.
On your mic, I couldn't hear what you were saying, but anyway. So, why Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 26? Well, the stakes were just, first of all, much higher. Undertaker's streak or Shawn Michaels' career. You wouldn't want either. You don't want to see either go away. Of course, with respect to WrestleMania 25, it is without a doubt, like it is in my top WrestleMania list, but it's just that there was so much more at stake, and that made WrestleMania 26 more watchable. I wanted to watch this match, but I didn't know what to feel. There were so many emotions going through my mind because on one hand, I'm like, I love Undertaker. He's my favorite, but I don't want Shawn Michaels to leave because Shawn Michaels is Shawn Michaels. And the second thing is the build-up. It was a very realistic build-up because Shawn Michaels was this close. He was within inches of doing what no one else could do. And the fact that he had failed, it played on his mind because he knew he had the Undertaker's number and all he needed was one more chance. And the Undertaker said, nope, nope, nope. And finally, Shawn took an extreme measure and cost the Undertaker the title. And even then, you couldn't hate Shawn for it because you understood he was so close. And now let's talk about the match itself. There were just so many brilliant moments. One of my favorite personally was Undertaker versus Undertaker tombstoning Shawn Michaels on the outside. And I was like, it can't end in a count out. Yeah. No way. Yeah. And just the end, let's talk about the ending of that match. He kicked out of the tombstone, Shawn Michaels, and Undertaker was in disarray. He just couldn't believe it. He was like, what am I going to do? And he was trying to tell Shawn, stay down. And then that slap across the Undertaker's face that just made him do that like jumping tombstone. I was for a minute scared for Shawn's neck. And then, of course, the 1, 2, 3. And even though I was happy, okay, Undertaker is still like undefeated, I just couldn't help but to just look at the screen and say, but wait a minute, there's no more Shawn Michaels. This is it. This is like the end of one of the best performers ever in a WWE ring. So yeah, for that reason, I would say Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker, WrestleMania 26.
Okay.
That's sorry, I just want to add one more thing. Sorry, Kunal, I forgot. In terms of the match itself, people would have never expected it to even come close to WrestleMania 25, and it still did. They did. Yeah. Somehow they managed to do it 2 times.
Yeah, that's a very unexpected twist that we had regarding the 26. Farhan has to say a lot about that. Can you say anything if you want?
I'm going to super kick Mikhail's face when I see him next time. That's all I'm going to say.
Right here.
Mustafa,
No. Can I just say something though?
Yeah.
Shawn Michaels himself actually says that both his matches are his best. Both his WrestleMania matches with the Undertaker are his best. He never chooses only 25. Even like when the whole quote unquote greatest wrestling match of all time was being built up for Edge and Randy Orton at Backlash, Shawn Michaels said that both my matches are the best. He didn't say my 25 or my 26 is the best. So like it
Can I
just
just say,
explains what McCall says that this literally lived up to the same kind of match as 25 was.
can I just say something?
Yeah,
In a
sure.
more serious note, see,
Yeah.
Mikhail mentioned that the stakes were higher. Now, from a storytelling perspective, that's kind of true. But the thing is that the WrestleMania 26 match, it didn't have that same intensity. I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. For me personally, see, WrestleMania 25, they were like, for me, that match, it genuinely looked like Undertaker would lose the streak. But in
Exactly.
26, the thing is that everyone knew Sean was done after that match. Like I think if you really sort of look back and you think about it, it was Shawn Michaels' retirement match. It's literally career versus streak. When you know how the match is going to end, it kind of loses its sort of it loses its mystique. You know what I'm trying to say? I think what makes a good story is unpredictability. And I
Yeah.
think WrestleMania 25 had so many twists, so many turns, so many unpredictability that WrestleMania 26 did not, in my opinion. WrestleMania 26, it was a great farewell match, but it didn't show the best of Shawn. It didn't, even though Shawn says that it was his top two. Undertaker says it's one of his best matches, and that's fair. And of course, their opinion is more valuable. But just for me personally, that match, it had a great story. It had one of the best build-ups ever, one of the best promos ever. But it's just the fact that that intensity was lacking, unlike the previous Michaels versus Taker Part One. So that's just my opinion on that.
Kunal, do you mind if I respond to Farhan?
Obviously, man, that's the podcast is for.
It's,
Here we are then. So Farhan, okay, fine. Maybe I can agree with that. But see, looking back at it, like maybe in hindsight that's true, but at the time, what I thought was, see, look, Undertaker was not getting any younger. He was also like on his last legs because, I mean, you would see it after every WrestleMania match after a certain period of time. He would start like lying down the ground, and
yeah.
he didn't look good at all. Like he would be tired. He would be actually beaten up. And at those moments you would be worried for him. In fact, what happened just 1 year later after WrestleMania 26, that
Yeah.
he had to be carried out of the area
Mm.
of the arena. So for me at the time, it was like I don't know who's going to win because both are veterans, both are like reaching that age of retirement. So at that time, I was like, it could go either way. And secondly, the match itself, I feel it's still it lived up to this. Did it exceed the standard of 25? Probably not, but I think it was on par with it. It couldn't exceed it, but it was definitely on par. And there was a lot more intensity because every time like a switch in music or a tombstone or a last ride or a choke slam or an elbow drop or anything was hit, you kept thinking to yourself, is this it? Is this it? You know,
Exactly.
so it added a level of intensity to everything those two athletes were doing in that ring. And of course, I'm not saying that WrestleMania 25 is like not good. Of course not. It is still like it is arguably the best WrestleMania match. But for me, 26 just gets ahead because of the build up and because of the match itself, like in terms of intensity, like I mentioned, and also like reasoning behind HBK wanting to wrestle Undertaker one more time.
Can I respond to that, please?
Please do, please do.
Yeah, so I can see where you're coming from. I can see the validity of what you're saying, but I still stand by what I'm saying for me personally. So I
Yeah,
just
that's
suggest
completely
I just think it comes down to difference in opinion. Maybe you felt it
fine.
was more intense, but that's fine. I didn't feel it was as intense, but hey, that it's still a great match.
Yeah,
WrestleMania
yeah,
20, it's still a great
no
match.
doubt, bro, no doubt.
It
Yeah.
would
Both,
also be it would be in my top five actually, but because I felt having two, you have to pick one between the two
Yeah.
HBK and the two Triple H.
yeah,
But
exactly.
to
That's
be
actually, I think,
fair,
why all of us choose them.
to be fair, that match would be in my top five. I'll
Yeah.
I think that's actually like why none of us like chose both matches, because it would just be too easy.
Yeah, it would be, there would be no variety.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Can I
But
say something? Can I say something as well?
Yeah, sure, man, Mustafa, go ahead.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, yeah, because like Farhan said that okay, we knew Shawn Michaels' career was ending after this match, so you kind of predicted Undertaker would win. But that's again what made these matches the iconic matches that they were. Because again, going into 25, no one expected Shawn Michaels to come close to ending the WrestleMania streak. Yeah, you thought he was going to be a great Indian competitor. Yet in 25, there were so many moments that you almost thought, okay, now it's done. Again in 26, you go in thinking, okay, this time Shawn Michaels is going to retire. However,
Hmm.
that match turned out in such a way that you were thinking, okay, this close, like Mikhail said, Shawn Michaels got close again. You started thinking, oh my God, the streak is going to end. The streak is going to end. You had that same feeling in 27. You had that same feeling in 28. Therefore, like Shawn Michaels is so good that he can make you believe that anything can happen in the ring when he's wrestling, even though you might go in thinking that okay, I know the outcome, but it might change in the middle. Like your view on the outcome might change in the middle of the match, and that exactly. I mean, that's exactly what happened in both those WrestleMania matches, 25 and 26.
So anyone wants to respond, or the discussion is done regarding the top 5 matches of Shawn Michaels? I would like to talk
I
to you.
just
Yeah,
add one more thing.
sure, I add, man.
You know, so the one incredible thing, regardless of whether you think it's 25 or 26, which was better, the thing I love about those two matches is you don't just see it being in top WrestleMania matches. You see it top overall. Like this
Exactly.
is as good as you're ever going to see, and I love that because I think both those matches, whether you guys agree or disagree with me, we can all agree that those two matches have a place in top wrestling matches ever, and that makes
Exactly.
it so much more valuable to us. Like we feel privileged as we're in our 20s that we got to grow up seeing Shawn Michaels and the
Exactly.
Undertaker wrestle, whereas like newer generation kids are gonna have to basically live through what we went through with the Attitude Era and with WCW
Great.
because too young to actually understand those things.
So, thanks for discussing the top 5 matches. I would like to
Hmm.
go to the recent thing that has happened in WWE, of course. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen what has happened recently, but Roman Reigns has turned heel. Now, I would like to talk to you about that as to
Yeah.
what kind of. No, no, I see, Farad, you have to understand. We have to talk about wrestling. I know you don't like Roman Reigns, fine. But Mustafa, I'd like to note, Mustafa, I would like to start with you with Roman turning heel and with Paul Heyman. Is it big enough to make him the most hated heel ever?
Look, man, I honestly think he can be a great, amazing heel. When I saw him initially, right, when I saw Roman Reigns initially, I thought he has everything to be a monster heel, not just like a hated heel because he's arrogant and cocky or like he's annoying or he's just a bad guy. He can be the feared heel that Mark Henry was, that the great Khali was, and is right now. Like he has everything. First of all, like that long hair, that deep voice, that like a man of less words and stuff like that. Like he could have, like he can, like I can imagine him doing stuff like this, coming in, beating people down mercilessly, just doing some moment drops or whatever through the announce table. That's, by the way, that's one of my favorite sites in WWE, seeing the announce table gets like seeing someone being put through the announce table. So I'm genuinely excited because I hated seeing him being pushed up as face as much as people want to agree or disagree with me. I did not like seeing him beat Triple H at WrestleMania 32. I agree with the reaction he got in Raw the night after. I definitely didn't like seeing him beat Undertaker at WrestleMania 33. And I very much agreed with the response he got on Raw the night after again. Definitely, I felt bad when he had to, give up his title due to leukemia and stuff. Like, I really did feel bad for him. And like when he came back, I was excited to see him. But now with his heel, like and now him turning heel, I think we might just see a whole new amazing side of Roman Reigns as the badass heel that personally I have always wanted to see.
So, Mr. Farhan, I know you hate Roman Reigns. You don't like him as a wrestler. So, I'd like to hear your thoughts on Roman turning heel.
See, this is my issue. Is that the problem is that it's too late for Roman Reigns to be a good heel. It really is. I mean, they had so many opportunities to turn him heel. They really did. I mean, the second when he beat Undertaker and he got that reception, why would you not turn him heel? I don't understand, I feel like too much time has been wasted. I feel all the perfect opportunities were gone for Reigns to become a heel. I feel that when he announced his cancer, his leukemia, I mean, really, he has. I mean, obviously, I know Joe Anoa'i is a great guy. He's got a great demeanor, and yes, I believe that Roman Reigns had great potential to be a great superstar. WWE's awful storytelling just killed it. uh, do I think he'll be a good heel?
I agree.
Yes. Yes, I think he'll be a good heel. Do I think he's going to be a great heel? No, because his mic skills are nothing amazing, to be very honest. If he's
But
trying
he's
to
got
go
Paul
for,
Heyman. He's got Paul Heyman with him.
yeah, but again, the thing is
Exactly.
that again, this is the problem is that yeah, he has Paul Heyman with him, but if to be a real superstar, you have to be intense on your own. See, this is why Brock Lesnar can never be the greatest of all time. This is why Brock Lesnar can never be in anyone's top. He cannot be taken seriously as a goat because he's lacking in promo skills. Yes, but Paul Heyman is a good promo person, not Brock or Roman Reigns. At the same time, very honestly speaking, I don't think Roman's wrestling is that special. And I also feel that Roman Reigns, it's just that so much has been done to damage his character in my eyes. Him main eventing 5 WrestleManias, him beating Undertaker. I mean, come on,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Exactly.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
So
I got on that.
I mean, come on, I just cannot move past those things from me. I mean, can you imagine Roman Reigns retiring Shawn Michaels? I mean, I literally throw my
Never.
laptop. Like,
Never.
Gosh.
and you know what? And you know what? Let me tell you something, right? Let me tell you something. If Shawn was still wrestling, they would have made Roman retire him. I guarantee you,
Oh no.
they
But
would have done it.
that would lead to
I hope.
strikes and protests on Twitter and Instagram and stuff. But
Yeah,
let's not talk about that with the current situation going on in America.
yeah.
Mikhail, I'd like to hear your thoughts on Roman Reigns turning heel.
Okay, so I actually understand where Farhan is coming from on this. Like, I can see what his point is, but there's a couple of things I want to put into perspective here. Is, for example, okay, when Hulk Hogan in the 90s, he left the WWF and he went to WCW, he didn't immediately turn heel. So they waited 2 years and he was getting booed out of the building. People were tired of the whole eat your vitamins and say your prayers, brother, kind of thing, because that just passed. It was not what was relevant anymore. So obviously, Hulk, you could ask Hulk Hogan as well. Like, he tolerated it for 2 years. That getting booed, getting like crap thrown on him. People were just like fed up of him. And then he drops that leg drop on Randy Savage, and he becomes Hollywood Hulk Hogan. So putting it into perspective, when it comes to Roman Reigns, I don't think it's too late. I do agree with Farhan that, if they've missed the to pull the trigger many times, but I don't think it's too late, because WWE definitely has a knack of, they can, if they really want to, turn something that looks shit into like gold. And I think Roman Reigns is that, because he's, first of all, believable. His whole look, like, his build, his personality as a heel, you can get behind, because you can get that he's just like a badass heel. He doesn't need to be one of those cowardly heels who cheats all the time.
Exactly.
And secondly, I think that Roman Reigns promos, when they're scripted, are god awful, but that's not even his fault. I feel bad for the guy, because when those few moments where he's been able to be himself, and when he's improvised lines, you actually see that he can actually pull it off. He can actually, be great on the mic. And even in terms of his wrestling skills, he is getting better. I think people just need to be patient with him. So I think that, if Hulk Hogan, who was a much bigger star, a much bigger baby face, can become that great of a heel by, joining the by forming the NWO. I know it's early, but I do think that at some point Roman Reigns has that potential to be that level of heel. Because keep in mind, this is the first time we're actually seeing WWE have that kind of guts to do something like that. They never pulled the trigger with Cena, and you saw what that did. And like the Stone Cold Steve Austin heel turn wasn't really consequential, because no one was booing Austin. They still cheered him. So it was just like, yeah, he had a personality change, but he was still like the hottest baby face in the company, kind of, judging on crowd reactions. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Okay, so for me, Roman is a very tricky character. I've always seen him as a very good athlete in terms of what he does. But when you compare him to the superstar they have now, he's nowhere near the. He doesn't have the
Exactly.
athletic skills and stuff. When he was part of the Shield, he had that good image of being the strong guy, and then Braun, he had that great rivalry with Braun, which I loved.
Mhm.
Something
Yeah,
very
that was
different, something very hardcore. But then, ever since his cancer, he's come back and he's looked lost. He lost to Drew McIntyre, I think, in 30. I think when he came
Yeah.
back to wrestling after
Yeah.
cancer in 35. And I don't understand that part, man. When you're coming back from a when you make a big comeback, I know Drew McIntyre is the champion, and I know they wanted to build him up. But when you have Roman coming back, and if he's your baby face, you need to make him win. They made him lose,
Yeah.
and I'm like, he lost. And obviously, people were like, "Oh my god, shocked!" But actually, as a business perspective, that was a big, major
Yeah.
mistake by the WWE in terms of, for me, for making him lose, because Drew McIntyre obviously is a champion and he's a very good athlete. I love him. He's the future. But if you want to build your number one guy, because no one knew that this COVID-19 would happen, because he was there till 1 week before WrestleMania 36, I think 3 weeks before WrestleMania 36, and was supposed to face Goldberg, and then he obviously opted out because of personal reasons. But with Roman, I have to say that I was really shocked with the fact that they actually made him lose in 35. Him defeating Undertaker was a shock, as everyone was expecting, because it was something that we didn't know. We saw Undertaker in a very bad shape. People didn't expect Undertaker to be in the bad shape that he was, and we got to know because of the Last Ride documentary. And we saw Undertaker was not even ready for the match. He was not. He was just like, okay, I have to do this. But actually, business commitments. I think Undertaker's too loyal to Vince McMahon. I think it's too much. He
Yeah.
doesn't know how to say no to him, because some of the things are like when he came back with John Cena in 32 and he had that 5 minute man, which is a good thing. I expected more, obviously, as a fan, to see John Cena Undertaker. But when John and Vince decided to give Undertaker that push, like, to have that redemption kind of redemption in that same arena where he lost to Brock Lesnar, which is another controversial thing with what happened. And so that's my opinion. But for me, the WrestleMania 33 match just showed that Roman Reigns cannot be a good guy. People hate him, and now
Yeah.
he's on the heel, and there's no there's no fans in the arena, which is a very bad thing. But I hope there's some kind of a change right now after 2-3 months, where the vaccine comes and people start coming into the crowds. Because without the fans, wrestling is nothing. Without the fans, football is nothing. Without the fans, cricket is nothing. We need fans, and you need people to interact. So that's my take on that. And thank you so much, guys, for joining me on the Kunal Call, the first episode. For everyone who's seeing it, who will see it later, please leave a like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We have more content to come up with, and we'll come up with every 3 to 4 days with a video, and we talk about wrestling, football, as well as movies. So thank you so much. Thank you, Mikhail. Thank you for Mustafa.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
and
Thank you for having
take
me.
care. God bless, and thanks for watching the Kunal Call. Take care, guys.
Take care, guys. Thanks for having me on, and this was really fun.
I loved it.
See you.
Yeah.
And WrestleMania 25 was better. Bye, Mika.
Yeah, it was.
No.
Bye.
Okay, see you guys.